These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs.
Tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal Television for Agricultural Business Decisions is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Bryce and thank you for joining us today on Market Journal. Thank goodness for the rain. Those are the words echoed all throughout Nebraska as rain fell earlier this week across much of the state. As the growing season now in full swing, you can expect Nebraska Extension Field Days to be happening regularly. And to that point, we've got a couple of details on upcoming events for the month ahead. As always, we'll be breaking down the latest happenings in the grain markets. Darrin Newsome set to join the broadcast here in a few minutes. And Eric Hunt, when it comes to weather, he'll be giving us an update of what we can expect also coming up on the show. All of that is coming up, but let's begin here with an in-the-field update. As I mentioned, thankfully we saw some much-needed precipitation over the last couple of weeks in Nebraska. And for some folks, it's been good for soil moisture, but it also could mean an uptick of diseases in cornfields. Market Journal's Mike Straub recently spoke with an extension plant pathologist to learn what producers should be watching for.
Fields have seen some much-needed moisture recently, but in the state of Nebraska, severe weather usually brings the rain. If crops have seen wind, rain, or hail damage this year, be on the lookout for several different bacterial crop diseases.
We're really grateful for all the moisture that we've had recently. That's really going to help us out for germination and getting that crop started early. Unfortunately, as it often does, the moisture came with some more severe weather. And in many cases, a lot of us in parts of the state had some sustained winds that were very high for several days. And it really beat that crop up. In some places, we had a lot of wind damage on those leaves. It's tattered some of the tips on some of them. On top of that damage, we've also got a little bit of small hail that fell in a lot of areas. And so we're looking at a crop that got beat up a little bit, and so there's some wounding out there. And in Nebraska, where we've had histories of several different bacterial diseases, most of those bacterial pathogens can take advantage of those wounds and use them to infect the plants. And much of these conditions occurred across the state, so this is something I want people to watch for over the next few days and weeks. And so what they want to look for are maybe symptoms of Goss's bacterial wilt and blight. That's been our most common disease that we see after severe weather and wounding events. One of the symptoms of Goss and wilt might be the dark freckling we see near the edges of lesions. But there's some differences here because our crop was damaged before the V6 leaf stage. It means that sometimes we see a systemic phase of that disease develop, which is more severe, and it might actually develop and kill the plants, causing them to wilt overall. And what's happening is when we have plants that are V6 or younger, the nodes are all stacked very tightly. Most of them, fortunately, are below ground. And normally we would feel much safer that the plant is pretty much protected and it should normally survive. But in the case of Goss's wilt, and especially the systemic wilt phase, it can move throughout those nodes and sometimes eventually kill those plants, even in some a little bit older. You may or may not see those freckles that I mentioned. Often you'll just see that general wilting down. And so that'd be something I'd watch for. It can kill plants, often in patches in the field. And so that'll be something that people should be watching out for. Otherwise, we also had a lot of driving, wind-driven rain, and so it pounds into those leaves. And we've often in Nebraska also seen the development of bacterial leaf streak after a driving rain event like that. And we've reported gosses and we've reported bacterial leaf streak across the whole state. If you start to see streaking on the leaves between the veins, they'll start very small. The thing that sets them apart is that when you hold these leaves up to the light and you see bright yellow spots or streaks between the veins, that is often bacterial leaf streak, and so that will continue to elongate as the season goes on. And bacterial leaf streak is one that can be hard to tell from gray leaf spot, the fungal disease. It's important everyone recognizes, though, starting early when temperatures are cool, it's much more likely to be bacterial. And so these bacterial diseases cannot be controlled with fungicides. If you need help getting a diagnosis, please send samples to the UNL Plant and Pest Diagnostic Clinic. A third bacterial disease we've seen, but not nearly as commonly, is bacterial stalk rot. That one's different. It can also kill the plants. If you handle those plants and notice it has a really terrible odor, that's usually a symptom of bacterial stalk rot. And unfortunately, managing these diseases, although it can't be accomplished with a fungicide, selection of hybrids or different hybrids that are more effective in the future years is probably a good idea. And it's a reminder for us that all of these pathogens do overwinter in the soil or in residue, and that you're likely to see them again and again. And if they're a particularly severe problem for you or frequent, it'd be a good idea to work with your seed company agronomist to try to position hybrids that do resist those better.
Bacterial crop diseases are on the rise after recent severe weather. Management can be difficult, and most diseases can return after winter. If you've been having a problem controlling bacterial crop diseases, think about working with your seed dealer to come up with a selection plan to combat the issue in the future.
Thanks for that information, Mike. Now, if you'd like to keep up with the latest diseases and threats when it comes to this growing season, be sure to bookmark the website cropwatch.unl.edu. Moving on, and a brand new virtual reality program coming from Nebraska, Alaska, and Hawai'i Extension will actively engage youth in agriculture across the country. That's right, Nebraska, Hawaii, and Alaska all teaming up as part of this. Educators from around the area were able to get a first-hand look at this technology during Nebraska Extensions Excellence in Ag Sciences Day in the Raising Nebraska building, which is at the Nebraska State Fairgrounds. Here's a look at the day's events.
Get it all set up, good to go, and you back up, and then you're like, yeah, so this is the 19th annual Excellence in Ag Sciences Day, and this is a program for ag teachers across the state to get some professional development. So they'll get some tools that they can utilize in their classroom or in their FFA chapters. And it's been a kind of a long-standing tradition, and this year we're focusing on virtual reality field trips and then also some curriculum that will help complement some of those virtual field trips that they'll do in their classroom. So trying to focus on the technology, so with learning a little bit about how GMOs are formed and some of the electrophoresis process that's actually used with that. So hopefully it'll give the kids kind of a hands-on approach into learning more about some of the biotechnology that we have in agriculture.
I really like the electrophoresis thing that we just did. It took a little bit. I've never really worked with the agar stuff, and watching the genes be able to be modified the way that they are to be able to watch that simulation. I already do some, this is how you pull the DNA out of fruit, but being able to then put in, okay, so if we were to gene edit, this is how that would go. So that was kind of fun. I think it helps just by giving me some real world experience. Randy does a good job in bringing in some of that educational experiences that as ag teachers we try to give it to the kids, but it's hard for us to stay on top of things, whereas Brandy, that's part of her extension aspect, so it helps us bring it back into the real world experience.
What do you want this person that's looking at this tour to know about the pictures that you have taken, okay? We have some of the virtual reality field trips that are not only from places here in Nebraska, but we have partnered with Hawaii and Alaska, so we can take the kids to places to learn more about agriculture without even leaving the classroom. So it can be a cold, winter day with snow, and they can still learn more about some of the field trips or learning more about agriculture. Obviously in January we don't have corn growing, so we can take them to the cornfield right then in January and give them a chance to look at and learn and explore some of those pieces. We'll take them to Hawaii and they'll learn about some coffee, some tea, and those pieces so that they understand really where their food comes from. I think a lot of our Nebraska kids know about corn and soybeans, but they might not even realize that bananas come from a tree, and cacao is what we get cocoa from. And so just exploring those other opportunities and thinking about like Alaska. Obviously they don't have near the growing season that we do, so again, just getting them used to some of the crops that they grow up there in that part of the world. We have, I think, 34 ag teachers, and we're having these ag teachers learn and explore about agriculture so they can take it back to their students, because they all have probably over 50, if not 100 students within their class. And so that way we're able to reach more youth by reaching our ag teachers. So the teachers today are actually going to be able to get a stipend so they can actually buy some of the equipment themselves and utilize in their classroom. This is possible through a USDA NEFA grant that we have. And so we're not just going to have a one and done with these teachers. We're going to help provide some support for them, maybe do a Zoom if they're trying to create their own field trips as well. So it does a really good job of connecting Extension with our ag teachers, and so we have a lot of amazing resources throughout Nebraska Extension and IANR, and so it helps draw them to some of those resources and technologies that we have so that we can work more collaboratively with each other. It can help our youth understand more about agriculture, help them be able to spread the word about what agriculture is, some of the technologies that we have and utilize, and essentially just reach more people in more of a hands-on approach rather than just sitting and looking at a book or looking at a computer. It just immerses them a lot more.
It seems like a really fun program to get involved in. If you'd like to learn more about some of the upcoming educational events from Nebraska Extension, we provided a link along with the story. You can find that over on the Market Journal homepage. Up next is our chance to check in on what's been happening in both the grain and livestock markets. Joining the program this week is bar chart senior analyst Darrin Newsome. Darrin, good to see you. Welcome back to Market Journal.
Yeah, thank you for having me on again, Bryce.
All right, well, it's that time of the year. We're in the midst of summer, the early days of June. I've been told in the past that there are three things the markets follow, in particular the grain markets right now. It's weather, weather, weather. What am I missing?
You're not missing anything. That's an accurate description of things. And we have to keep in mind, and it's just a good chance to remind everybody, these markets are weather derivatives, weather derivatives at heart. And so usually this is the time of year when weather moves, to the spot, to center stage, steals the spotlight and all this sort of thing. Now there's plenty of other noise and chaos circulating around the sector, but at the end of the day, particularly as we shift our attention from old crop to new crop, it's going to be weather that steals the headlines. Okay, well, let's spend a little bit of time breaking down each commodity. Let's start with corn. What's the storyline right now, and how's the demand situation? A couple different things there. The storyline is, if we look at what the market is telling us, there was a lot of corn. There was a lot of corn planted early, and that corn seems to be in good conditions. Now we know this by looking at the September, December, and December, March future spreads. This past week has seen them both spreads move to new lifetime lows, meaning the strongest carries that they've registered. So we've got commercial selling in the September and in the December futures contracts, again, telling us a lot of acres were planted early and those acres are in good condition. There's not much concern right now over long-term supply and demand. Now, as far as trade goes, what we're seeing, we had the latest weekly export sales and shipments update come out on Thursday. And what we continue to see is the pace projection based on shipments for this time of year continues to decline week by week, and it posted its highest projection number the last week of October or the first week of November, something like that. And we all know what happened that first week of November. That's kind of helped to start the decline in this export sales projection, export shipment projection.
I was going to say, that can't be a surprise to those who have been watching the markets and the chatter out there. Let's shift from corn to soybeans now. Anything different sticking out to you? Those two markets seem to follow each other pretty closely day to day.
No, there's really not much difference. Now, again, probably if I'm looking, for splitting hairs here, right now the weather attention is going to be focused mainly on corn because, again, it got planted early, more acres were planted early. Soybeans are just kind of drifting around. If we look at the chart and we apply some technical analysis, all we see is just some sideways trends. There's just not much movement there. Future spreads are neutral out in the new crop market. So again, there's just not much going on. Now, in the old crop, again, similar to corn, we've seen that pace projection for marketing year shipments coming down since the last week of October. So, but it's still running ahead of last year, but I don't think that's anything really to brag about. The difference here is that we do see some commercial support in the basis market. And what this tells me is we've still got strong crush demand, domestic crush demand. So, this has been the focus of, demand for U.S. soybeans, not necessarily in the export market. We know the U.S. is a secondary player on the global stage at this point. But at this, as we head into summer and get deeper into summer, it continues to be domestic crush that provides support.
Well, one of the oldest phrases around is rain makes grain. Seems to be true for the wheat complex. Seen some beneficial rains all across the plains, but at some point, the chatter is that we don't want some grain at a certain, we don't want some rain at a certain point. Wheat also seems to follow a lot of the factors happening outside of the U.S. What's been catching your attention for the wheat complex?
Yeah, the biggest thing in wheat is that we know it's fundamentally bearish, particularly the winter markets. At the end of May, we saw available stocks to use, and this is based on cash index. It's national average cash prices. So we know that these cash indexes were showing available stocks to use were some of the largest that we've seen over the past 10 years for the end of May, which is also the end of the marketing year. To that, we will be adding newly harvested supply. So, it's not like the U.S. is going to run out of wheat anytime soon. Now, we've seen a bit of a bump in the market, on the commercial side or on the non-commercial side, we've seen some fund buying. And this is just short covering in nature, fits with the seasonal pattern where we do see a bit of a rally over the first 2 weeks of June in winter wheat markets. And then the bottom falls out as more combines start running, harvest moves north up into Oklahoma and Kansas. That's when the particularly the hardwood winter market starts to come under increased pressure.
All right, finally, let's get a word on livestock, in particular the cattle side of things. Live and feeder cattle markets we saw, it's been probably 10 days ago now, that rumor about the New World screwworm. I think, let me get your take on this. The market reaction to that just kind of shows how shaky ground perhaps the cattle market is on. And if one of those rumors comes out to be true, we could see that market head down pretty quick. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment. It doesn't take much. I mean, this market has been, particularly live cattle, but both markets have just gone parabolic, almost straight up. And what that does is it leaves a lot of room underneath without any real change to fundamentals. It could cause quite a bit. It could cause a dramatic sell-off. But speaking of fundamentals, they remain bullish. And so this is where, we continue to see an interesting situation develop. We've got basis running quite strong because I've had some reports of $228 cash reported in the South, yet, futures are running well behind that. So there's this belief in the futures market that the cash is going to break, but we're just not seeing it in either box beef or the cash markets. And so at some point, one side or the other is going to have to give. Could possibly be futures finally start to rally to the degree that we're seeing in the cash market. If not, expect cash to come crashing down.
Always a good discussion of what's happening in the grain and livestock markets with Darrin Newsome. Now, I want to let you know that coming up next week, we'll be hitting the road, heading out to a cattle feeder's place. That's Mike Briggs. He's always a fan favorite here on the show. If you have a question you'd like me to ask Mike, be sure to email us or get in touch on social media so I can pass your question along. For nearly 120 years and counting, the Stanford family has been dairying in Richardson County, but it's more than just the dairy industry that this family affects with their involvement in their community. All 6 of their children, along with the parents, have been involved in their small but mighty dairy operation over the years. You can learn all about making a small dairy successful in the June issue of the Nebraska Farmer. And speaking of June and dairy, it is officially June, proclaimed as Dairy Month by the governor. Well, it is now time to check in when it comes to weather with Nebraska Extension Ag climatologist and Market Journal Chief Meteorologist Eric Hunt. Eric, we're getting some nice precipitation here, but these temperature swings are something else. What can we expect when it comes to the week ahead?
Thanks, Bryce. Some significant precipitation for some in the last week. We'll see some more swings in temperature this week, but not quite to the extent that we saw earlier this week. Trough will be moving into the Great Lakes region as we head into Sunday afternoon. At the surface, we will see a cold front blast through the state. That's going to bring a chance for showers and thunderstorms statewide. I think the best chance of getting any meaningful precipitation will be along and south of Highway 30. Right now, models are not particularly bullish on any major moisture falling from the sky during the day on Sunday, but I think it's something to watch out for as we head a little bit closer to the weekend. I don't think we're going to see too much precipitation as we head into the early portions next week, so I expect Monday through probably Wednesday and early Thursday to be dry for pretty much everybody. And it'll also be a little bit on the cool side, particularly across the southeastern 2/3 of the state. Early in the week, high is probably 70 statewide early in the week, warming up a little bit more across the western portion of the state by Wednesday, and I think everybody should be in the 80s by Thursday and Friday. Speaking of Friday, I think by that point we should be looking at the potential for more troughing here off the west coast, with opportunities for more short waves moving into the plains region. With some moisture return from the south and southeast, we should have a chance of getting some showers and thunderstorms across the entire region, including all of Nebraska at least by Friday, maybe even as early as Thursday night across portions of western Nebraska. A little bit too early to pinpoint exact precipitation totals, but I do think there's going to be a chance for a lot of places to pick up a half inch, potentially an inch of moisture. Again, the CPC does show above average precipitation favored for the period of June 11th to the 17th. And I think chances to get about an average amount of rain, which is good news this time of year for the eastern 2/3 of the state. We could use that moisture for a lot of us. Also looking at warmer temperatures favored here, so I think by the time we get later this next week through probably at least the solstice, perhaps beyond that, we're looking at above average temperatures being favored across this region. I don't think we're looking at any major heat waves coming in, but certainly a lot of days the highs probably well in the 80s, maybe getting to 90 degrees a little bit more frequently as we head into later this next week and into the week after next. That wouldn't necessarily be the worst news in the world. We are running a little bit short on heat units across a good portion of the Corn Belt and upper Midwest right now, so that actually is not necessarily bad news to get a little bit of heat on the crops. Precipitation, significant amounts of precipitation fell across portions of central and western Nebraska. Highest amounts, Lincoln County. We did have some flooding issues Monday night and early Tuesday morning, so some of that rainfall came way too quickly. We are actually running surpluses of moisture going back 60 days across a lot of north central and portions of western Nebraska. But since early April, we are definitely short of moisture here across the southwestern portion of the state. And also probably the biggest deficits are still found here across portions of southeast Nebraska. And really most of the, I'm going to call it the prime corn and soybean region of the state right now, we really do not have a lot of margin for error for precipitation going forward. And you'll notice we are still short on soil moisture compared to where we'd like to be. So even though we've definitely had some beneficial precipitation of late, we have not really fully recharged soils. And that's still showing up here in pasture conditions. So Nebraska at 56% poor, very poor. We saw the poorest rangeland conditions outside the southwest. GrassCast is indicating even if, actually this is below normal, so there's a very, very good likelihood of a lot of southwestern Nebraska being below average for forest production. But even average precipitation would probably also mean below average forest production across the area right around McCook, given conditions to start out the season. And this is the temperature and precipitation around it for the week ending May 31st, 2025. No one had freezing temperatures last week for the first time in 2025. Back to you, Bryce.
All right, thank you very much for the update, Eric. Finally today, it is that time of the year where we'll see lots of extension events popping up all across the Cornhusker State. In fact, this week kicked off Nebraska Extension's annual wheat variety tours, which started in Jefferson County. This event, hosted by local farmer cooperators and university farm managers, will highlight 84 unique wheat varieties and experimental lines being tested all across the state. These tours will occur in 5 fields across several university-affiliated locations, and educators will be on hand and joined by seed industry partners to provide updates, answer questions, and provide their insights when it comes to seed varieties for participants.
We get experts to talk about the varieties that we have, So the wheat breeder, Dr. Catherine Frales, and myself and other specialists will be, on site, and Catherine will talk about the different varieties that we have in Nebraska and the breeding program, the lines she's working on that have promise for release as varieties. So, and then I will talk about diseases, and this information will help growers choose the varieties that will be best for their production, and also they will know information about the diseases that are occurring and how to manage those diseases so they can prevent losses.
These tours have already kicked off, as I mentioned, this past Thursday, June 5th in Jefferson County at Noble Seeds. Your next opportunity is coming up fast on Monday at 5 p.m. Central Time at the Peters Seed Farms in McCook, which is in Hitchcock County. June 10th, they'll be at the Stump International Wheat Research Center in Perkins County. That tour will kick off at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. If you can't make it to that location in the morning, you've got another option. June 10th at the V&F Seeds in Dual County. That tour will kick off at 5 p.m. Mountain. On Wednesday, June 11th, beginning at 8:30 in the morning, there'll be another tour hosted at the High Plains Agricultural Lab in Cheyenne County. And the second option of that day will be at the Colon Farm Seed in Hemingford, or I should say near Hemingford, in Box Butte County, beginning at 5 p.m. Mountain. To view the full list of dates and times, just check out the link we provided along with this story that is over on the Market Journal homepage. Also coming up later this month, Nebraska Extension's Weed Management Field Day. It is set for June 25th at the South Central Ag Lab located near Clay Center. This field day will feature on-site demonstrations of emerging technologies and new herbicides for corn, soybean, sorghum, and field corn. You can enjoy coffee and rolls during registration, which begins at 8:30, and the field day will conclude at 1 p.m. Want to let you know that lunch and UNL Dairy Store ice cream will be provided for participants free of charge. However, in order to get an accurate amount of ice cream, they do need you to pre-register for this event to ensure there's plenty of ice cream to go around. CCA credits also available for those who are interested. That is about all the time we have for this week's broadcast. But before we go, a quick shout out to those hosting the Cattlemen's Ball of Nebraska. That is happening this weekend in southeast Nebraska. This annual charity event raises money for cancer research and over the years has now provided millions of dollars for the Buffett Cancer Center. Now the site where the ball is at, it received some moisture this week, about 1.70 inches I heard, but hopefully the weather cooperates for the festivities over the weekend. Hope to see you right back here on Market Journal next time. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.